Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll make a start now. My name's David Chadwick. I'm the immediate past chair of the Guild Eastern Branch, which will be hosting this webinar this afternoon. Just a reminder to everyone, please, to ensure your cameras are turned off and your microphones are muted in order to minimise the bandwidth taken up. Also, I'd like to remind everyone that this webinar will be recorded. Please post your questions on the chat line and I will pick those up at the end of the presentation and pose them to our presenter. So it's my pleasure to welcome today Michael Wingell of Anglian Water, who will be telling us about the digital risk assessment tool known as the Hive that the company and Michael in particular have developed. So then please, on to you, Michael.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So yeah, today I'm here to talk about the Hive. Just as a quick introduction to myself, so I'm currently the Geospatial Strategy Manager at Anglian Water. That means I'm accountable for our corporate GIS systems and obviously the geospatial data held within it, including our infrastructure data, which is all of our mains and sewers that run underneath. Very quickly, a little bit about Anglian Water itself. So we are the largest water and water recycling company in England by the geographical area. We cover all the way from the Humber Bank right down to the Thames Estuary, and we serve almost 7 million customers across the region, including Hartlepool itself. Being in the east, we have a lot of challenges, especially around rainfall. We're one of the driest regions in the UK. We're only receiving 2/3 of the national average rainfall. And also we're a very flat land as well, which means that we have to do a lot of pumping in order to get the water around. So there's a lot of energy costs associated with the region. We are obviously quite dry, and we are also one of the fastest growing regions in the UK, so projected to grow by another 175,000 properties by 2025. We operate a lot of network, obviously, across our land, so 38,000 kilometres of water mains approximately. It stretches from Sydney to back in terms of water, and we have just as much in terms of water recycling network as well. Our core purpose is to bring environmental and social prosperity to the region we serve through Love Every Drop. And it's really around that I'm here to talk to you today, especially around our environmental purpose. If you think of our water recycling network, and obviously right now in terms of national press and government agenda, is very much around water companies and their focus on the environment and what are we doing to make things better. So we obviously have quite a challenging environment. One of the things that we're really interested in is obviously reducing our spills, reducing our pollutions, trying to keep the network as free as possible, and sort of maintain it based upon obviously our aging infrastructure and how do we do better than that. So really in light of that problem statement, we kind of worked out a way that we could visualize risk better across the network. Historically, our GIS has just been used to locate assets. So, when the guys out in the ground needed to go and find a manhole, they would use the GIS system in order to locate the manhole itself. And actually what we've sort of developed, and I think kind of universally has been developing over the last few years, is a lot more analytics around geospatial and the ability to present risk across the network in a much better format and a much more responsive way for people to be able to access. So we used a company called Esri. We're using their Arc Online, which is a software as a service platform, in order to visualize this risk. We have lots of data connections with our on-prem data servers to be able to feed this online. And I'm not going to try and, there's a lot of content. So what I was really going to focus on more today is just the methodology behind what we've done and how we've done it, rather than go massively into the architecture and stuff like that. From a very high level, quickly, we use a thing called FME, which is basically a data translator. And the way that data translator works is you can have a reader, you have an input source, so you can connect to virtually any source you want to. So, we can connect to SAP for work management in terms of our job notifications. We connect to on-prem data sources like our infrastructure data itself and other geospatial data sets. We can connect to external data sets if we want to use Meteomatics for weather data, or for environmental agency data or government data. And basically the clever bit with FME is we can then do all of the analytics and the calculations within that application itself. And again, we use a thing called FME Server, or I think it's FME Form, to be able to automate that process. And then on the right hand side, it then obviously spits out whatever we want to do in whatever format we want to do it, so we can use that to produce it directly into our Esri Arc Online platform, and then we can take that data and use it as in terms of visualization for the business to be able to make better decisions. One of the things that was really important for us in terms of this is we desperately wanted to move away from that spreadsheet type scenario where you have a load of planned work that's sitting on a spreadsheet in table format that's difficult to be able to understand. We very much wanted a more visual representation of what's going on. The second ask as well is that we wanted to move away from static data sets into a more dynamic realm. So rather than producing a bit of analysis or a bit of work that then gets published and sent out to the business, and 5 years down the line they're still using exactly the same information, we wanted to ensure a robust process that would give us more real-time data and more real-time analytics. So again, in our ever-changing environment, we are able to know that we are still using up-to-date and correct data when trying to make those business decisions. So what I'm going to do now is actually show you a working demo of the Hive rather than Death by PowerPoint. So here you can see the product itself. Again, it's just connecting via a URL. It's a web page. It's accessed via license, so you need a named user in order to be able to access it. Certain things we put on the public domain, so where we want to show stuff in the public, we can do that. Other stuff we keep internally, so there's kind of two different ways around it. And again, really the purpose behind the Hive itself is very much around a one-stop shop. So I'm sure within your respective organisations, you've probably got many systems and many applications to solve many different problems. And we're much the same in Anglian Water. And one of the things we wanted to do is kind of have a more central point for people to go, rather than have to access 15 different systems to get the information. It was all about how can we bring it into one place. So the way that the Hive works itself is we obviously have a landing page, and we've kind of developed a series of web apps. So if I bring up the left-hand tool here, you can see within the web apps we have different links to different tools depending on what it is they want to do, whether it's an up-to-date situational awareness, whether it's certain teams that need different types of scenarios, then they're able to access it via the tools. The main page as well also has kind of some basic functionality which you probably want, we felt the business will want to use right out of the block. So you can run your basic queries. Again, if we want to do a quick property search, we can click around the map like that. And quite quickly you would get that type of result in terms of the number of properties affected, which you can then export via GeoJSON, or you can do other stuff with accordingly. We've got some other stuff in as well, so maybe you want to do an elevation profile when you're again responding to water recycling, and you want to know the way that the pipe's running in terms of that upstream and downstream. You can obviously just click it. So it's very simple tools, very easy to use. We try to make it as user friendly as possible in order for the business to get as much out of it as it possibly can. And then you can obviously do asset searches, you can do address searches, quick searches. It's all kind of basic functionality. And then within the data itself, you have the ability to change what data you're looking at. So again, we've got a series of different data sets, whether it's administration, whether it's asset data, whether it's external or watercourse data. All of that's available to be added into the web map accordingly. And you can obviously change the base maps if you want to, depending on what you want to particularly look at the time. If it's master map background or more aerial imagery, we have that available, and simple legend display to show sort of what's going on. So that's the kind of the basic landing page for people to use right off. But then again, what I wanted to kind of focus on today was more around the specific web apps that have been developed for specific business user cases. So one of the things, again, for those unfamiliar with the water sector, we obviously had quite a challenging winter, to put it, with the amount of rainfall that was going on and everything that was happening across the region. One of the things we wanted to do is better communicate with our external stakeholders. So where we've got parish councils and this, that, and the other, we wanted to be able to go to them and sort of show a representation of what's going on. But again, trying to move away from this static PDF document, we kind of generated what's called a playbook. So here we've got, again, a landing page that takes us to those playbooks themselves, which covers the catchments that were of interest over the winter period. And again, within those, you can click in and you again have a nice live view of what's going on in this particular catchment. It works via our story maps. So you've got a bit of blurb about, the catchment itself and the pumping stations. Then we have links to infiltration reduction plans, and we've also embedded maps as well. So again, this is the catchment of Tempsford, and you can see the current outstanding work orders, and thankfully it's quite dry at the minute, so there's generally no problems in terms of loss of service and flooding. But again, this is live data that's available to the public via the URL if they want to go in and have a look at this type of stuff. We have bits of geographical information, geology around the inner workings of the catchment itself, all the way down to the actual network itself and what we're doing in terms of planned preventative maintenance or monitors that have been installed in this and the other. So it's a nice, again, quite a simple way for people to be able to interrogate and have a look more about what's going on in our particular region, or their particular region, should I say, where they're based, and extra information about contacting if there are problems and this, that, and the other. Again, the other things that I kind of wanted to focus on was the risk tool itself. So again, this is a separate web page that's linked via the link, take you straight to it. And what this is doing is, again, it's outputting onto a map our asset data, but it's actually profiling that asset data in terms of the risk associated with pollutions for every single asset, or for flooding risk, or for what's going on in terms of network and planned work and how effective it is. So again, I'll talk you through some of that stuff right now. As you can see on the screen, what we're currently showing is the blue dots represent all of our historic pollutions from category 1 to 4. And as I zoom in more, I think it should also bring up other data sets as well, such as loading that in the web map. Yeah. So you can see this will have all of our external floodings, internal floodings, as well as our blockage data as well. So again, this is for guys out on the network when they're responding, that they can understand sort of historic events that have happened, or where those hotspots, where those mains that we need to target accordingly. The mains themselves are really coloured very simply. So red to green, green being low risk, red being much higher risk. And they're based on a number of different factors. In fact, if I click on one. So we'll have anything from historic events that have occurred. So whether it's blockages, whether it's, again, the pollutions, floodings, or blockage solutions, or external and internal floodings. You have, its proximity to, in terms of bathing waters. You'll have look at different stuff, the gradient of the sewer itself, how flat is it, what the liquid type and the size that the sewer is, the proximity to a triple SI, triple SI meaning sites of special scientific interest. We have stuff in there in terms of, proximity to watercourse. All of this kind of generates different weightings depending on those different factors. And then it basically produces a risk score. And that risk score is then outputted onto the map itself and then is shown accordingly. And again, one of the good things about this is dynamic. So actually, that risk score that is associated with that today may change depending on the factors around it. So, as the years goes on, if we don't have any incidents, if it's well maintained with PPM or this, that, and the other, then actually that risk will lower, and then the actual colour itself will change, so that we have confidence that when the guys are using this to try and plan activity, they actually have a proper weighted against those sewers that is dynamic and will keep it. And again, because we're specifically looking at pollutions, and pollutions from our perspective very much has a higher weighting when we've got a watercourse nearby, you would probably see that where we do have watercourses, those sewers that are in close proximity are generally more weighted higher. So although that gives us a good risk rating in terms of pollutions, it might not give an overall risk maybe when we want to look at floodings or other stuff. So again, if I switch tabs, we've now got the same view, i.e. no matter where I am on the map, it will just flip between one and the other. But this is given a different set of weightings depending on what you're looking at. So again, this is much more in tune with the flood risk. And actually, the team that deal with the floodings, they didn't want it via the individual sewers. They actually wanted it broken down by postcode area. So again, it's a nice, simple, register the red, shows those postcode areas that are high in terms of flood risk, and then we can correspond to the level of activity that's going on accordingly. One of the things, again, that was quite important for us is to actually understand, in terms of the work that's being carried out on those particular hard risk areas, how effective are they at doing their job? i.e., are we doing what we were supposed to do? Is it making a difference in terms of turning that dial for environmental performance to prevent floodings and pollutions going forward? So we actively needed to track what was going on. So again, we've got another tab here called effectiveness. And if I zoom out a little bit, you can see what this does is allow us to have a look. In fact, if I bring up our legend, it shows those different types of activity that's going on, and then also indicates about whether it's being effective or not. So where we've got assets with PPM, you can see that what they're doing is tracking the PPM activity, i.e. if we were going out and jetting that sewer, we were trying to clean at any given type. It then monitors the performance of that sewer against any more blockages, pollutions, floodings that occur on that pipe to see whether the work that was carried out was actually effective or not. And where it's not, it's showing in red. And where it's a bit unknown, i.e. it might be doing its job, we've currently got it in amber. And where we know it's going good, we've got it in green. And again, it's important that we can see this to assess actually that work is being effective or not, or whether there's different activities that need carried out. Is it that there's structural defects on the sewer itself, and we need to send a CCTV to check it out and probably replace or reline the sewer itself? Is the activity being carried out effective in the way that it's being done, or is it just the fact that it needs cleaning more often? So rather than being on a 9-monthly jetting plan, it needs to be moved up to a 6-monthly plan and a 3-monthly plan. Again, historically from Anglian Water, we've kind of had a little bit more of a finger in the air on these types of things. We've put it on a maintenance plan and we've left it to be forevermore in the hope that it's doing its job without really worrying about it. Now we're really setting that to task. Again, you may or may not be, we're making quite a big deal in the public press about the number of monitors that we installed, which we're installing around the region, I think 22,000 monitors across the region, to try and help locate these blockages ahead of time and do something about it before it impacts our customers, before it impacts the environment. So again, all of those monitoring locations, we also want to understand, are they being effective? Is it working in terms of picking up the alarms in time and making a difference in terms of that network? So one of the really crucial things about this tool is that we wanted to have all of that activity in one place so that we can understand if we do need to do PPM because there's a specific hotspot here, actually, are we already doing work? Are there already monitors installed? Is there already stuff that's going on that would mitigate against it and therefore we don't? It's this joined up approach about being proactive, moving from a reactive workforce into a proactive workforce and make sure we're targeting those areas accordingly to make a real big difference. Again, the majority of the data itself is coming from different data sources, telemetry data for a storm harvester, or whether we've got asset data that's coming in via our Geowater database, which is sat on-prem, whether we have different environmental data as well. It's all kind of fed through into one nice portal that hopefully is pretty easy to navigate. We try to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, you can even have a look at stuff like weather impact. If I zoom out a bit, switch tabs. And again, what this is doing is tracking meteoromatics data. So we're looking at aggregated rainfall over the last 6 days and the forecast over the next 7 days to be able to understand, at a catchment level where we feel there's likely to be more impact. So again, we then start to see that where we have high degrees of rainfall, we can have a look to see actually what work is being currently undertaken or not being undertaken, what are our resources looking like for those particular areas, so that we can kind of respond accordingly. And then the other thing I wanted to show you again from a Hive perspective is our situational awareness. So this is more looking at real-time data rather than the planned work. So this is again talking about reactive work. You remember at the beginning of the presentation I sort of showed one of the things that we were looking at was our job data. So when a customer rings up because they've got a problem within their within, I don't know if it's an external flooding or they've noticed a full manhole or this, that and the other, we basically pull that live job into this environment on a 30-minute basis. So it refreshes every 30 minutes so that we understand exactly what our current open work orders look like across the region. And then we categorize them as well so that we can understand, is it a full manhole? Is it a loss of toilet facility? We also bring in other stuff as well. So actually, where do we have and our pumping stations, our non-infrastructure data, if there are alarms going off for telemetry, because we have high wet wells, we bring them in as well so that we can understand what's going on. But again, part of the situational awareness was not just about showing what's going on our network. It was also about bringing intelligence to that to be able to make better decisions. So actually, in terms of our work orders, we don't just want to understand where our work orders across the region. Actually, we need to understand as well the kind of the spatial analytics around that open work order itself. So maybe we want to target those work orders that have got a close proximity to watercourse because they're more likely to impact in terms of the environment and the pollution. So actually, how do we understand? So we take those work orders on a 30-minute basis. We run spatial analysis to understand if it's close proximity to a watercourse, and where it is, we can then flash and highlight those jobs accordingly. So again, if I select where we've got, I don't know, a loss of toilet, we can understand that that is in close proximity to watercourse, or if we're looking at full manhole jobs. And again, it's this ability to be able to triage more effectively rather than relying on lots and lots of people who have to analyze each and every job. We try to get the system to do it for us and then present that in a way that we can respond more actively and go and target that particular full manhole because we know it might have a greater impact than others across there. Also, where we have high wet well alarms, and we can understand that if it's possible with capacity issues rather than specific asset failure, again, it prevents the need for us raising the job for a network guy to go out, have a look at what's going on, for then him to assess it, realise it's a problem with a pumping station, send it back, the call centre raise another job for an M&E guy to go out and fix it at a pumping station, and you're wasting valuable resource to go and do something in a place that they didn't need to do it in the first place. And again, it's live data, so we get to use it all the time. It's available for our, again, internal colleagues for when they want to use that. We have it in a table format if they want to be able to export those jobs and be able to use it in other systems. And it all brings back again into that central platform to be able to see what's going on. When I talked before about customer facing portals, so we obviously have the storm overflow map itself. And again, it just links to our website where you can see in terms of these are all our current storm overflows and which ones are in alarm or which ones aren't across the region. As you can see, it's a pretty good picture right now. And again, it has that real-time data to be able to see what's going on at any one point. These are all from different systems, and again, historically in the past, we've struggled to kind of see the wood through the trees and try and join these dots up, and really that's what this tool has enabled us to be able to do. There are other bits and bobs that are available with it, so again, you can pull out and have a look at in terms of effectiveness. So when I showed you that situation piece in terms of, I'll bring on this map around the effectiveness, again, we've got it in different formats for different people depending on the need that they want to use it. So if you want to actually look at the Power BI report that sits behind it, again, you can click on it. It should hopefully allow me to sign me in. Bear with me a second, sorry, didn't plan this in advance, otherwise I wouldn't have had to do this. Yeah, and again, so you see it's loading up to the Power BI report, which then gives us that much greater depth in terms of the breakdown of how it's working with regards to blockages and the PPM activity that's being carried out, whether that PPM program should be increased, whether it should keep or reduced or remove. Again, I think the important thing here, and one of the things I'm really trying to stress is, especially when you're dealing with big data, you know, there's so much information available to users, and there's so many different reports available from a business perspective. There's so much analytics. It's not about losing that depth and that detail, because it is actually really important in terms of decision making. But what it is about being able to tailor the detail to the specific user at point of use. And this tool does that really, really well. And again, it is that one-stop shop. So actually you can pretty much access loads of different areas in terms of water recycling just via that one particular tool. We know, because we're using proper data translators, that it's coming from corporate sources. You're not accessing it via spreadsheets or via stuff that's in Joe Bloggs's, do you know what I mean, C drive that's actually not up to date. It is not kept thingy. The way that we kind of tailored it and produced it is to ensure that at any one time people are looking at data that is relevant, that is coherent, and that, again, they can use to actually make better decisions. Sorry, it was quite quickly. I was thought it was. I was trying to aim for the half an hour mark, but I've obviously talked rather rapidly. So that's pretty much comes to the end of my presentation, and would welcome any questions that you have.
Thanks, Michael. I mean, I just start off by saying I think you've got a fantastic tool there, and God, you know, if only you had that when I was at Anglian Water, life would have been a lot easier, particularly with understanding sewage flooding problems and projects and so on. I mean, we've got a couple of questions, but I'll start off with one actually. I'm very interested how this. What was the sort of initiation of this tool? What caused it to be developed?
So the primary business case was actually about pollution reduction. So it was very much focused on where do we target in terms of our PPM program. PPM stands for Planned Preventative Maintenance. So when they're going out and doing their jetting, how do we know that we're actually targeting the sewers we should be doing in terms of preventing pollutions going forward? So we had a number of workshops with the business to understand the matrix, i.e. the criteria, the weighting that they wanted to associate with the sewers. And it was very much at the beginning around, like I say, a spreadsheet type thing, whereby they were having a download of all the sewers and trying to rate them in terms of those particular categories, and then output that for the local teams to be able to assess their PPM work. And through those series of workshops, there was a very much of the art of the possible. And actually, could we do it in a more visually representative way, which kind of where I came in from a GIS perspective, because obviously my background is all about mapping. But I also had worked with the teams on using FME to automate a lot of processes. And one of the things I very strongly sort of recommended was that actually we move away from just producing a spreadsheet to do PPM work, and actually let's bring it in terms of using all of our corporate data sets to be able to inform that work. And then from that, it kind of developed in, well, actually, if we're now presenting this risk to be able to better inform our PPM program, could we then automate the PPM program itself so that actually where it's being effective or not being effective, we can change that accordingly? And we kind of developed that into what was the original risk tool, and worked really well. And then we started to show other people in the business that tool and how it was working, and they then had different demands. So again, the asset delivery planning wanted to look at investment, and actually in terms of where we've got a scoring on the catchment in terms of if we spend this much money, we should get this much back from it. Could we use that to inform better in terms of our catchment program when we're looking at investment opportunities? And it was like, yes, we could. And actually, you'd probably want to bring that in the same place, because some of the same people look at the same data. And then from there, it was like, well, actually, in terms of communication with our customers, actually, is there a way that we could automate some of that so that we're not producing static PDF documents? And then the playbooks and the story maps came out of that, and then it felt logically to bring that again into the front end portal so that it's all in one place. And if I'm honest with you, we are very in the early stages. Like the portal itself, what you saw on the screen in terms of the the full front end development has only really been kicked off in the last probably 6 months. So there are a lot of different user stories out there that have already requested that we generate portals for them and bring them into the Hive accordingly. So, you know, if you come again in a year's time, I suspect it will look and feel slightly different with a lot more information in it for the business to help them in terms of their day-to-day decision making.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, no, very, very impressive, and I can see there's a huge amount of data there. Look, I'm sure will feed or has fed into business plans to be submitted to Ofwat for the 5-year reviews and so on, because it's
Absolutely.
huge amount of data, and they're all with a solid basis as well. Excellent. Couple more questions actually. First one from Michael Skilkey. Can it show the history of change to the dynamic risk score and reasons behind the change, i.e. mitigation installed, storm tank installed, and so on? So I think it's basically Michael saying, well, yeah, can we show the history of changes and improvements to the system in there?
It's a great question, and it's one that's been asked by the business as well. So again, as I talked about our early development as a tool, it was very much around the here and now, i.e. what's going on and what is our current risk. But actually, it's become very apparent very quickly that they want to be able to understand a lot more in terms of trends. So being able to analyze jobs over 30 days or 60 days to see those trends and those mitigations that we've done and the impact that it's had, being able to understand trends in terms of alarm data and flow data from telemetry on our sites and how that influences the network itself. One thing that I haven't shown you that we're currently working on, and again, I talked a bit in the beginning, and I don't know how it is for other respective industries out there, but in terms of water industry, we obviously have two very different data sets. So we have our infrastructure data, our pipes, that obviously sit within underground assets that sit on our corporate GIS, but we have then all of our overground assets, our tanks, our sites themselves that sit within our system of master data management is SAP. And actually what we've started to explore recently is blending those two worlds together into one hydraulic model from source to tap. So in essence, we take all of our non-infrastructure data, our hierarchy, when it's pumps, our tanks, our valves, our meters, etc., and we actually digitize them in our corporate GIS so that it's a connected model, so that each individual tank, each individual compartment with their pump curves and their storage levels basically have a connected feed into our network, which is then connected via inferred services to our customers, so that actually should the pump levels drop or this, that and the other, we can actually understand from our hydraulic models directly how that's impacting our customers. And in effect, we can then build our hydraulic models from our corporate GIS going forward. So when you were talking about trend analysis from telemetry, you can see that on the map, on the actual individual tank when you click on it. And more importantly, you can then use GIS technology to be able to trace the network to understand the impact downstream on our customers and our mitigations accordingly. So it's certainly quite a big topic for us at the minute. Part of the work that we're doing around the data is around cleansing our network, so ensuring that connectivity of our data model from source to tap. Obviously, there are a lot of complexities around the flow, the direction, the vertices, all of our point features, whether it's valves, etc. How we connect them all together, and then how that we ultimately maintain that model going forward through submissions when we've got new schemes that come through to, I don't know, guys on the ground when they do red lines and this, that and the other. So again, yeah, please, I'd love to come back in a year's time, present and show that fully integrated working model and sort of how that's impacted in terms of that analysis.
Yeah, thanks. Another question from Francis Finity. You showed rainfall forecasts +6 or 7 days and predicted impact. Where is the predicted impact data coming from? Is it from hydraulic models?
Right. So again, this is a new thing that we've literally just started to do. So showing the weather impact in terms of where it is more for resource planning right now. So it's a high level that we know so our region is broken down into what we call planning areas, if that sort of makes sense. So we have the north, the south, the east, and the west, as it was. So being able to understand the planning areas that are going to be impacted by rain, we then take that and they look at it from a resource perspective, i.e. do we have NTs that are off or sick leave or this, that and the other, so that we might need to move resource from one area to the other. We haven't gone as far as saying, again, if you look at that PPM program, it's sort of working 3, 6, 9 months in advance. You know what I mean? It's like, what are the maintenance plans that are being carried out in 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months time? It doesn't look at, if that PPM plan is being carried out in 3 months, do we want to escalate it and do it tomorrow, because actually this catchment has a high level of rainfall and therefore we want to make sure that the sewers are completely cleaned and going to flow properly. It's on our radar to look at, and how that we can increase that validity of our predictiveness in terms of the risk, so that we can make decisions. Because right now, if I'm being honest with you, we can't say with 100% accuracy that catchment, because it's got 70 millimeters of rain, is going to be impacted to the degree that we need to do something different. It's more about signposting right now than actually doing something completely different. The way I'd describe it to you on the call is that at the minute it's very much a predictive model. It's sort of showing what's going to happen. What we don't have is a prescriptive model, which is to basically show where we think next week it's going to land, and this is a sewer that you actually need to do something about right now.
Lovely, thanks. Following question, very similar question actually from Richard Kershaw, which is saying, clarifying actually just now in a recent discussion, did Michael say the hydraulic modelling integration is already underway?
So it is underway for water. Our water models, we are currently running a project where we are digitising all of our water sites in terms of what we call a detail view. Again, I'm happy to come back on another session and talk about detail view and the integration of our non-infrastructure and infrastructure data together. But in essence, we're about 3/4 of the way through that digitisation plan, and we're working with Innovise, who provides our hydraulic models, to work out the integration and how that we can have, in theory, we want a 24-hour model. So if someone goes out and changes the network today, tomorrow that will be reflected in the model that they're using for their forecasting and all of the work that goes on around that.
Yeah, lovely. And there's a follow-up again from Richard's second part of his question. He's just posted, are there any plans to replicate the wastewater tool for clean water?
There is, yes. And again, it's currently in flight on the water side. So they are doing a lot of work around it. The water side is very much at the minute looking at the situational awareness piece. So rather than just concentrating on the risk across the network, they're very much looking at here and now. And again, it's those storage compartments, tanks, levels, pump curves, all the other bits and bobs, and how that feeds downstream in terms of real-time situational awareness and where we can optimize sites better as a result of that overall picture.
Lovely, thanks. Are there any other questions at the moment for Michael? Can't see any coming through. I mean, I'm guessing actually going back to the water, sort of wastewater side of things, that with a water system, things are, the asset information is always been so much better with water anyway. And it's sort of a lot easier to integrate everything because everything's basically within Anglian's control, as opposed to the weather, for example, on the wastewater side.
It is to a degree. I think, again, historically, because there's been so much emphasis placed on the water network and, you know, the customers and how they're impacted from it, there's been a lot more focus in terms of data and technology around water. And I would say that it is in a better position than our water recycling network. But obviously, as we've seen over the last months and years, you know, that kind of whole perception around water is more important than water recycling. It's pretty much been turned on its head. Yeah. And it's very much an equal footing now for both. And so it's great that we're, personally from a master data management perspective, we have more time and resource to be able to put into our water recycling network as much as our water network. So it is very much right now about how that we improve our master data capture on the water recycling network. How do we improve the transferred sewer network? So again, in 2011, we had to adopt all of our transferred network, which we had very limited information on where that network was, and we worked with local councils and other organisations to try and ascertain that, and didn't have very good drawings at all. So although we're responsible for it, we don't actually have it captured as part of our master data set. So there's a lot of work that's ongoing currently to try and improve the validity of that model and bring in those transferred sewers accordingly, and again be able to use it in the degree that water can. So yeah, it's certainly in work in progress, shall I say.
Yeah. There's a huge amount of work there. It's asset data has always been the Achilles heel in the water industry as long as I was involved. Right, are there any other questions for Michael? Doesn't look like anything's coming through. Well, in that case, Michael, I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of everyone. Fascinating talk. I think it's really opened my eyes to basically how things have moved on, and I think also the potential of data. Now we've got far better computing power, far more powerful computing power. What we would have liked to have done years ago, which we couldn't be. Now we can start to do, like integrating all these data systems and as you mentioned, the infrastructure asset and a non-infrastructure asset, get them all talking together, and come up with predictive things and so on. There's a black cloud on the horizon. What does that mean? All those sort of things, which would be fantastic. So I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of everyone for a great talk. And wish you all the well, and perhaps we maybe in 12 months you could come back and give us an update.
Great stuff. Thank you for having me.
Very much.
Much appreciated.
Cheers. Okay,
cheers,
thanks.
Everyone.
Thanks very much, everyone.